We're live.
Uh, come bounce away with us and discover the behind-the-scenes story of how Walt Disney transformed Matthew the zebra into a bouncing Disney masterpiece. The story of Matthew the zebra actually began on the San Francisco stage in 1951. It was written by renowned author and playwright Mr. A. Milne of the Winnie the Pooh series. In 1968, shortly after doing Alice in Wonderland for Disney in 1968. Here to talk to you first about how this film was translated from the stage version to a Walt Disney classic. Here is Leonard Maltin, played by my dad, Stephen Douglas Sprinkle, who will tell you a little bit about Mr. A. Milne's stage play in 1905 and how it was translated into a stunning Disney masterpiece. Leonard?
Corey?
Yes, Corey.
Corey, how are you today?
I'm good.
Good. Well, it's good to be back. I always enjoy these get-togethers that we have. Yes, A. Milne, famous children's author, put together a pretty amazing little play, Matthew the Bouncing Zebra.
Yes.
And for those of you who have had the pleasure of watching zebras as they cavort across the savannah, you'll understand how A. Milne decided to make Matthew a bouncing zebra, because even though they run kind of like horses, they also bounce a little bit kind of like antelope and kumquats and zabats. They kind of boing, 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 boing like that. And they reminded Milne a little bit of Winnie the Pooh's buddy, Eeyore, who is just the polar opposite of Matthew the Bouncing Zebra. I mean, Eeyore just kind of plods along. So this was a really big departure for Milne to have a black and white striped zebra bouncing across the stage. And well, it was in San Francisco, and it was shortly after the earthquake, when a lot of San Francisco had been destroyed. And so Matthew the Bouncing Zebra kind of got the community back into, well, you know, there's more than death and despair and destruction. There actually is some good theater. And when Mr. Disney got a hold of the stage material for Matthew the Bouncing Zebra, he sat back and said to himself, Walt, I think you could make a movie out of this. And so he contacted me, Mr. Disney did, and asked if I'd be willing to collaborate with him on making a movie out of Matthew the Bouncing Zebra. And I said, well, of course, Mr. Disney. I think rather than just allowing the audiences in San Francisco to enjoy this masterpiece, let's make it available to the entire world through the magic of Disney. And that's how it got started.
In the late 1950s through the early 1970s, Walt Disney's best beloved stage play, starring Nathan Lane as Matthew the Fox.
Matthew the Fox.
I'm sorry, I meant Matthew the Zebra.
I was going to say, we have two Matthews. I didn't even know about Matthew the Fox. So Matthew the Bouncing Zebra.
Yes.
Nathan Lane.
Yes.
Plays the role.
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
And when Nathan Lane got the role in 1902, Walt decided to share these fond memories with his children. And in 1921, shortly after, Matthew the Zebra was a big hit in 1906. Walt decided to make a little feature out of it, starring the director of this film, Wolfgang Reiterman. Now, to tell you some more about how Matthew the Zebra got the okay from Walt to make this full-length feature, here is Mr. Ollie Johnson, played by my dad, who will tell you some of the animation drawings that he did to make Wolfgang Reiterman's film come to magical life. Ollie?
Well, yes, Corey, it's good to be back. Originally, it was thought that Matthew the Bouncing Zebra would be a short, 5 minutes tops. Because, how much can anyone take of a zebra that's bouncing up and down and across the savannah and whatnot before they have an epileptic seizure from watching that black and white stripe go like that? Because that does trigger seizures in a lot of epileptics. And I started doing my drawings, and then I got to thinking, well, just because he's a bouncing zebra, he doesn't have to bounce all the time. He could just bounce a little bit, maybe at the very beginning of the movie and at the end, and the rest of the time he can walk around, lie down, run like an ordinary horse would run without all the bouncing. and we wouldn't have to worry so much about people having epileptic seizures. And so I talked to Mr. Disney, and he says, well, you know, you're right. He doesn't have to bounce the whole movie. So yes, let's make a full-length feature motion picture. And he asked me to do the drawings, and it took me 22 years to do all of the drawings, but I should say it's some of my best work. And you know, the final product speaks for itself, doesn't it, Corey?
Yes, and
now, you realize, of course, that this is going to go on YouTube, and we are limited to 9 minutes, which are about up.
I have one last line that
Okay.
I want to do
All right.
before we get this on YouTube. The voice casting needed to be complete to set the tone of Africa for Matthew the Zebra, and A. Milne wanted the voices to be timeless and appealing to all of the viewers all over the world. Now here is Mark Davis to talk finally about some of the voices for Matthew the Zebra in the early of the late 1920s. Mark?
Corey, it's good to be back. Thank you for having me on the program. Yes, I'll be delighted to talk about the voices. I mean, there is no voice that better sums up the African savanna than Nathan Lane. I mean, the pick of Nathan Lane to play Matthew the Bouncing Zebra was sheer genius. Enough said about Nathan. Then we have some of the other voices in the movie. There, of course, is the inevitable standby Lawrence. Martin Lawrence. He's in all of these movies. Then, of course, let's see here. I think we also had Yul Brynner came in. He was one of the voices. And Liam Neeson.
And also one of my favorites,
Eddie Murphy.
well, actually, Paul Winchell, who did the voice for Tigger, does the speaking voice for Leo, the
lion.
Well, actually, Leo the zebra.
Oh, Matthew's cousin Leo.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, how could I forget? Well, anyhow, those are all the voices, and it's about time to wrap this video up.
Yes. Goodbye.
Goodbye. All right.